Well, here we go with another adventure at fullytek Mechanical. We've got a 1985 Buick T-Type in the shop. It's a really, really nice car, really clean, relatively low miles. Body is just stunning on it. Customers owned this car for about a year, took it out on weekends and had a little bit of fun with it. He's always said it's just not as quick as he thinks T-Type should be, or the T-Types he's had before is. Now this is known as a hot air car. It's the last year for a non-intercooled engine. And he brought it to us. He said he wanted some modifications done, maybe convert it to an intercooled car, do a cam and some valve work maybe, and see if we can make a little bit more power. Because he just said this car is kind of lazy. It should be faster. So we took it for a drive, and it rides like an old 3.8 without a turbocharger, and it's pretty lazy. Certainly should be faster and have a lot more power and torque. So we said to him, well, before we go spending any money and doing any modifications, let's see the base condition of the engine. So the very first thing we did is gave it a once over. We found some electrical and some vacuum issues. Not uncommon for a 32-year-old car. Certainly things we can solve and clean up. And then the next thing we want to do is a leak down test. And a leak down test involves rolling each cylinder to top dead center on the compression stroke, right where the plug would light. And then we take the spark plug out and we put in a hose and hook up a leak down tester. It's a special tool. They're not a lot of money. They're about $100 or so for a decent leak down tester. This one's from Total Seal. And what we're going to do is it injects air into the cylinder at 100 psi. And then the second gauge is basically a 100 psi gauge that reads backwards. So 0 is 100 psi and say 50 is actually 50 psi, but it's expressing it actually in percentage. So it's telling us the percentage of the air that's going into the cylinder and how much is leaking out. And then if it's leaking out, we can actually tell whether it's a bad exhaust valve, a bad intake valve, a head gasket, piston rings, or a combination of all of those things. So we've been working our way through. We're about halfway through this compression test, or this leak down test. Cylinder number 1 had 40% leakage. It was on the exhaust valve, so we're already into pulling the heads at some point. Cylinder number 6 had about 20%, so it's not in bad shape, especially for a motor this age, and that leakage was past the rings. And now we moved on to cylinder number 5, and I want to show you something. This is pretty neat. So as we roll this pressure up, we want to set this regulator to 100 psi with flow, and you'll see actually we're not in too bad a shape. We're into the wear area of let's say 26-27%, but you can see we've got bubbles and air coming back through our cooling system. So what that's telling us is the head gasket around cylinder number 5 is blown out, and it's pushing compressed gas into the cooling system. You can also hear air flowing back through the oil drain holes into the crankcase, and that's air getting past the rings. But really, this compression loss isn't that significant, except that it's head gasket. So we're at a do not pass go, do not collect $100. These heads have to come off, and I have a feeling this is going to turn into a complete, total engine job, especially for this customer, because I'm sure going to want it done right. So anyways, this is why we check stuff out before we start spending money. All this would have been is by very early spring next year when he starts running this car, he wouldn't get far before he's into an overheat and spending money and probably lose a season of driving the car. So anyways, just because we're thorough, we're going to finish up. We're halfway through our leak down test. We're going to check the other 3 cylinders so we have a complete report for the customer. And then we're going to call him up and tell him that his engine has to come out and the heads have to come off. He was more or less prepared for this. He was hoping for the best, but he understands it's an old car. He spent a lot of money on this car. It's something he's wanted to have for a really, really long time. It's a very special car. And when this is done, it's going to be a very special engine in it. So keep following us, fullytek Mechanical. We'll go through this step by step as we build it up, as we have the time. It'll probably take us all winter by the time our machine shop is done with stuff. We've got a lot of research to do and figure out what parts are going to work right with this car, but when we're done, it'll be right, it'll be pretty, and it'll probably be fast.